Quick question, and I want you to answer it honestly before this video is over. Which romance anime did you defend when someone called it toxic? Because I already know at least 3 of you are going to type Toradora is not toxic in the comments before I even get to it. And I'm not here to say you're wrong. I'm here to explain exactly how 10 romance anime from the last few years made you feel that way, and why the technique worked. This is not a hate video. I want to be upfront about that before we start, because the shows on this list are genuinely great. Some of them are my personal favorites. What I'm doing is more specific. I'm naming the exact mechanism each show used to reframe a behavior that would be a red flag in your actual life as something romantic, desirable, even aspirational. Once you see the mechanism, you can't unsee it. And strangely, most of these shows get better when you do, because you realize how much craft went into making you feel what you felt. Let's go. At number 10, Tsuki ga Kirei. This show is genuinely one of the most tender, realistic romances ever made. Kotaro and Akane communicate almost entirely through line messages, glances, and distance. It's beautiful. But there's a specific dynamic worth naming. Kotaro's emotional reticence, his tendency to go quiet, to pull back, to not say the thing, is consistently framed by the show as sensitivity. In reality, his silence puts the entire emotional burden on Akane to read him correctly. She does because she's emotionally intelligent and genuinely loves him, but the show romanticizes male emotional unavailability as depth, which is one of the genre's oldest and most quietly damaging habits. Number 9. Scum's Wish. This show is the most honest entry on the list because it knows exactly what it is. Hanabi and Mugi enter a fake relationship to cope with loving people who don't love them back. The red flag the show actually romanticizes isn't their dynamic with each other, it's that both of them interpret emotional pain as the most valid form of love. The people they actually love are unavailable and inappropriate. The show lingers on that longing with such gorgeous melancholy that viewers feel the pull of it too. It's not glorifying the relationship. It's glorifying the feeling of wanting what you can't have, which is arguably more dangerous. Number 8. Toradora. And before the comments arrive, yes, I love this show. That doesn't protect it from this list. Taiga hits Ryuji repeatedly. She destroys his property. She yells at him, demeans him, and makes his daily life harder in ways that are consistently played for comedy and affection. The show's thesis is that underneath all of this is a person who has never been safe enough to be gentle. And that thesis is true and well executed. But the specific technique the show uses, coding physical aggression as evidence of hidden depth and passionate love, is one the romance genre has never fully reckoned with. We've spent 15 years defending Taiga. That's the technique working. Number 7. Origairu Season 3. Hachiman Hikigaya is one of the most compelling protagonists in romance anime because he is genuinely perceptive. He sees through social performance in a way very few characters do. The red flag is precisely this. He uses that perception to preemptively self-sabotage, offering to be the bad guy, absorbing social damage, making himself the sacrifice, and frames it as a choice rather than an inability to believe he deserves reciprocity. The show resolves this beautifully. Season 3 is one of the most honest depictions of a person learning to ask for what they actually want. But before that resolution, what Hachiman models is a very seductive form of emotional unavailability. I'll give you everything except the thing that would make me vulnerable. Number 6. Kaguya-sama Season 3. The premise of this show is that two people who love each other refuse to confess because they believe that whoever confesses first loses. That's the joke. It's also, read literally, a relationship where two people weaponize their own feelings against each other for 3 seasons. The show knows this and deconstructs it. Season 3 is largely about dismantling the warframe and replacing it with actual vulnerability. But the audience spent most of their time rooting for the manipulation to be clever enough, the psychological trap to be perfectly laid. The mechanism here is that the show made strategic emotional withholding look like intelligence, and it's very, very good at it. Number 5. Rent-A-Girlfriend. Kazuya Kinoshita is the genre's most discussed case study for a reason. He is not a bad person. He is a person who has decided that the intensity of his feeling for Chizuru justifies behavior she has not consented to, inserting himself into her professional life, knowing personal information she didn't share with him, constructing a fantasy relationship, and then acting as though it creates obligation. The show codes all of this as loyalty. He's the guy who never gives up. But persistence directed at someone who hasn't chosen you isn't devotion, it's pressure. 3 seasons in, and the fandom is still debating whether Chizuru's gradual warming constitutes choosing him. That debate is the red flag. Number 4. Yakuza Fiancé. And this one is the most self-aware entry on the list. The show knows it's depicting a power imbalance. Miyama is literally from a Yakuza family. He's physically imposing, and his affection for Yoshino manifests as control over her movement, her safety, and her choices. What makes the show fascinating is that Yoshino is not passive. She pushes back. She is formidable. She is not a victim. The mechanism the show uses is to give her enough agency that the audience reads their dynamic as equals clashing, rather than one person controlling another. It almost works. The scenes where it doesn't, where Miyama's protection is clearly just possession, are the most honest moments in the show. Number 3. Blue Box. Taiki Inomata and Chinatsu Kano live in the same house. They are both athletes at the same school. They see each other every morning, every evening, and in every domestic moment between. The show frames this proximity as a slow, natural, romantic development, and visually and emotionally it is beautiful. But here's what the structure does. It creates a situation where opting out of the romantic dynamic would mean disrupting an entire living arrangement, a family relationship, and a social context. The path of least resistance runs directly through Taiki. The show is too gentle to ever make this feel like pressure, but the architecture of the situation is pressure, regardless of intention. Number 2. Kimi ni Todoke Season 3. Sawako Kuronuma is one of the most beloved romance protagonists ever written, and part of why she's beloved is also the dynamic worth examining. Sawako consistently assumes the worst about herself, doubts her own perceptions, and subordinates her feelings to avoid being a burden on anyone around her. The show treats this as her innocence, her sweetness, her vulnerability, and it is all of those things. It's also a pattern of self-erasure that the narrative consistently rewards rather than challenges. Kazehaya loves her, the show resolves beautifully, and Sawako grows. But the mechanism, teaching the viewer to find maximum self-diminishment maximally endearing, is worth naming. And number 1, the Spice and Wolf reboot, which I'm placing here precisely because it is the most sophisticated, most discussed, and most defended entry on this list. Holo is a centuries-old wolf deity. Lawrence is a mortal merchant in his 20s. The power differential is enormous. She is older, wiser, more powerful, and practically immortal, while he ages in real time. The show frames this as a meeting of equals, her wisdom balanced by his groundedness, her power balanced by her loneliness, her immortality balanced by her emotional need. That framing is beautiful and mostly convincing, but the mechanism, presenting an enormous power gap as irrelevant because the less powerful party has emotional qualities the more powerful one values, is one the genre uses constantly in much less careful shows. Spice and Wolf earns its romance. What it's also doing is modeling the framework that makes power-imbalanced romance feel acceptable. That's why it's number one. Every show on this list is worth your time. I want to be clear about that one more time before we end. What these shows have in common isn't that they're bad, it's that they're good enough to make you feel something strongly enough to excuse the mechanism underneath it. So, here is your comment question. Which of these did you defend when someone called it toxic? And after today, do you still? I genuinely want to know. Drop it below. Top 10 Countdowns, Modern Romance Anime, Real Breakdowns. Subscribe and never watch alone.